Well, it's nearly summer, and that means that a lot of you will be going off on holiday. And of course, that leads to worries these days about data and your phone. Nobody wants to be stuck with an enormous bill once they get back. And our sponsors, NordVPN, have got a product that might help you. It's called Saily. It's an affordable eSIM data for international travel. You get a data plan from the Saily eSIM app and go online wherever you are. So you can say goodbye to patchy Wi-Fi and high roaming fees. You'll save a lot of money, which is obviously good, but it's also safe and secure internet. There's no more dodgy public Wi-Fi when you're abroad. There's built-in cybersecurity features as well, web protection, ad blocker, and instant access on your arrival. So to go there without any worries and be in contact with whoever you need to be, hopefully see some Rangers signings in the summer, then get this. And you can do so if you download Saily in your app store or by scanning the QR code on screen. Use code Heart and Hand at checkout to get 15% off your first purchase. The details are in the podcast episode description box. Hello everyone and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar and as always I am your host as Heart and Hand goes into its 17th season. Yes, next year we will be old enough to be able to go for a night out, and a man who's no stranger to one of those is joining me today. It's Martyn Ramsey.
How we doing, Davey? Listeners, all set for another season?
Yes, another season is upon us. Seems to come around quicker every year, doesn't it? I don't know if...
31st of July is quick by anyone's imagination. And a Friday.
Yeah, we talk about players not getting rest in the summer. I'm beginning to wonder if supporters are the same, but it is here. And a lot has changed since last we spoke, Martyn, about Rangers. There is, of course, a new manager in place. There are several new players. And I sort of feeling a freshness. It hasn't really been over Rangers for quite a long time. A lot of familiar faces have moved on. Tavernier, Butland, looks as though Suter will be next out the door as well. And a sense of Rangers really very deliberately moving in a different direction this summer.
I think we've kind of talked about it on and off over the last wee while that sometimes you need to kill the Admiral, right, or an Admiral, and the Tav departure, because he's been such a mainstay of that era, whenever that happened, it would always be a sense of freshness because there'll be a new skipper, for example. And at this club, that's important, whether fans like that or not. So that I think that was always going to happen. I think some other players who have come in for some criticism, especially the goalkeeper, all of that, and because they're senior players or were part of that, senior leadership group, that inevitably just creates a bit of freedom and a bit of freshness, and at least hope that it won't be the same post-match sound bites and the same kind of story and the same kind of narrative. So I think that's normal for fans to feel that way. I think it would be a stretch to say that McInnes was a universal appointment in terms of its acceptance, but for the first time in a long time, there would have been a majority of the Rangers support well behind that. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of the other ones have been, well, I don't really know anything about them. We hope for the best, but who knows? So I think that makes a difference. Again, you've got a striker who a lot of the support feel will make that difference in terms of converting some of those margins that Rangers have been in the wrong side of for so long. So what you have as I said, for the first time in quite a wee while, are names that at least enough of the support buy into and therefore are positive.
I think for me the key or best thing about the managerial change is exactly that I think too often we've started seasons on the back foot, really, because no trust in the manager. It's been eroded over the previous season, or like last year, simply nobody thinking it was a good decision. And, when the best you can come up with going into a season is, well, he's here now, we'll see how he does. It's not encouraging to get into that first match. Whereas I think you're right. I think with Derek McInnes, there is a large section. It's never universal at Rangers, but certainly a large section of the support, I think, are very happy with it. And I was thinking this actually at Ibrox yesterday, that had Danny Rule still been in charge, Martyn, then, we're always nervous about the first game of the season. That's not unique to us, right? That's every supporter of every club. First game of the season. And all the usual, will we be ready? Will we be undercooked? All of these things, right? But we're not going into it thinking if we don't do well in this, then everyone's going to be howling for the manager's head and we're going to be right back into that situation as if the summer never happened. And I think that hurdle, or that rather potential obstacle, where you start the season in acrimony, and don't get me wrong, if we lose 4 games in a sort, I get that, but I'm just saying the first game is not a be all. It's not an almost referendum on the manager, and it feels like the first time in a while that's been the case.
Because you have enough buy-in. That's exactly it. There's enough knowledge about him, and obviously ties with the club, etc., to give him enough credit, I think, for a sticky start, which with a new team and new regime and players going out, lots of players coming in, is normal in football. We don't really accept what's normal because we can't allow that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think he would have a bit behind him should there be, let's say, a 1-1 draw on Friday, for example, and some stickiness in Europe. I think he will get a fair win behind them that others haven't had. I think you're absolutely right about the referendum and the manager, and it's just so pressurised. I don't know if you remember the first game of, it would have been 17-18. So the start of Pedro's, I guess, first season.
Motherwell,
was
I think.
to be. Yeah, it was Motherwell. It was Fir Park.
Yeah.
We won 2-1. I was there that day. I remember coming away thinking, I felt like a league decider in terms of just the stress around it and the kind of energy in the stands. That can't be how the first game of the season is, where dropping points is just unthinkable because confidence in the players, confidence in the manager, the regime, whatever, is so fragile. So I think that is something to take forward. But it'd be nice if we could just put a few wins up in order. That would be quite something. I think it's very clear we're going to do business later than we would ideally like to. And I mean, way ahead, but not the worst thing that the first Old Firm's not on the last, the first game after this, the window or whatever. It's into October, isn't it? So that might not be a bad thing either.
I think that the window and the transfer window, I think one of the issues that some supporters, mainly online, to be honest, I don't necessarily think this always translates to people you meet at the games or whatever. But I think that certainly online, it's almost like they set themselves a target of, in their mind, the first game, and everything has to be done by that, and it is never ever going to be, ever. That's the reality of it, and it's a pain in the neck. And if you or I were in charge of football, I know for a fact we'd both say you've got June, and that would be that. And tough titty on agents, managers, directors of football or whatever. But that would be your busy spell. But the window does have, as we record today, almost 6 weeks left, and Rangers, like a lot of clubs, will be active in and out right up until that day. It is annoying. It is frustrating. We would love to have all the players in by Dundee United ready to go and all the players we want rid of out. But it's simply a utopian idea.
It is, especially because in the real world, sales will be a huge part of what we do. One sale in particular might be a huge part of what we do. And he was involved to a fair degree at the World Cup. He's just back in Auchenhowie this week, isn't he, Raskin? So,
Yeah.
That was never realistically going to be kind of done and dusted. But clearly a lot depends on that. And a lot still depends on Europe and whether we've got group stage football or not. I get the sense of frustration and anxiety that, well, we kind of just have to gamble and speculate to accumulate kind of thing, because we can't afford to be behind the 8 ball, drop points. We're already postponing the St Mirren game, for example. All this kind of weighs heavily on supporters' minds. Not entirely sure it ever weighs heavily on players' minds, but just go and do the business that you have to, and basically gamble that you will sell Raskin, that nothing dreadful is going to happen in training or whatever between now and that signing being made, and that you get past qualifiers, and that they're benign qualifiers, and the draw works quite well, and we have that kind of guaranteed income again. I just don't think football clubs really work like that, especially one that's been through some of the financial scars that we do. As I'm interested in your take on this, Davey. As always the case, especially when you're part of a footballing rivalry and a very close structure in Scotland. Last weekend, we were out. A lot of the podders were out for the World Cup final, and quite a lot of buoyancy about the season ahead, based in no small part the fact that Celtic had basically done nothing and didn't look like they were going to do anything. That buoyancy isn't quite as vibrant this weekend, because nothing's stopping them spending over 20 million on a new front three. That changes the picture, and then it's like, right, well, what are we doing? They don't seem constrained by this, that, and the other. Well, there are obviously different elements in play, but it will swing back and forward between now and the end of August, I'm sure. But I can understand the sense. We knew the positions we needed to get sorted, and we haven't really done anything about it. We're kind of loading up in midfield, an area clearly where we have strength in. I get it, but as always, we have to wait till the 1st of September to really make sense of it all. That's just the way.
Yeah, and it is annoying. It is annoying that we have to do that, and that, as you say, things are dependent. I think sometimes we can forget that other clubs might have the same issues we are. When we're trying to buy a player, for example, they're maybe saying, well, hang on a minute, because we're after this player who we can find out about in 3 weeks. So, it is annoying, but we don't have sole agency in it, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. As for the question about what Celtic do, it genuinely doesn't bother me, because we cannot control it. They can do... they're going to sign some footballers at times, and there's nothing you can do about that. I'm far more in the let's get us sorted camp, and we'll see how the dice rolls. But yeah, so it genuinely doesn't affect my thinking one way or another. Never has. They can sign players. Best of luck to them. Well, actually, that's a complete and utter lie. They can sign players.
So it does.
Every one of them is a
so it does. It does matter. So it does matter.
I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm saying I don't care. It's not something that affects my mood. Of course it matters, if they've got a really bad team, then it's easier to beat them. But I can't, Rangers FC have got absolutely no impact at all on what they decide to do. It's about what we do, basically. I'm very much a sort your own, a sort your own business guy. And
that's the agency of the club, for sure. No question. I was merely making the point about the impact on mood and frustration, and the notion that if Celtic went out, of course it does, but the notion that your main rival, if they went out and signed a player that you really liked, for example, and maybe we were in for them, and they got him, that you wouldn't be bothered by that. I don't really buy.
No, if it was a direct thing, but it's not, is it? They're signing players that are, I don't understand why you would get annoyed at them doing, but when it's absolutely nothing to do. We didn't target the same players, so. I mean, I get it if one, if you're both going for a player and they get it, of course, that is different. I remember Rangers getting players that they wanted. I remember Celtic getting players that we wanted, and you're either gleeful or you're upset about it. But I think in this instance, I don't really care, because the problem has been for a number of years that Rangers haven't been good enough to take care of our own business in matches that don't feature Celtic.
Yeah.
So that to me is the thing that we need to look at, and we need to be much more focused on. So no, I just honestly, they don't really enter my thinking, and I'm not saying that to be blasé. They don't enter my thinking until, when it comes to that, it's obviously, they're our rivals and we need to beat them if we want to win stuff. But I think that's different to sitting panicking because they're signing some players. They've also lost some good ones. I'm not in any way sad to see the back of Dyson Maeda, for example.
No, I'm not sitting in my armchair in my office here shaking, rocking back and forward. I have noticed a difference in the mood in a week because they've pressed the accelerator and we haven't, and it's a case of what are you doing, Rangers?
But again, I've noticed that difference in online, and I do think it's different, and in fact I think it's actually getting starker, the difference between the online support and
that's a different
match going day. I think it's becoming starker because I think certainly just from anecdotal evidence, a lot of people I know have come off social media over the last couple of years.
I'm not far away. Yeah, I'm talking about the same people who were very buoyant last week. Yeah, and are like, again, not so much.
I think it's fair to say that those people are fairly emotional anyway, and certainly in their social media characters, there is quite, particularly in online. I just don't think it's reflected, as I say, in what you might call the match day going fan. There was 48,000 at the West Ham game yesterday, Martin. That isn't a support that's angry. That's a
absolutely not. I was never suggesting that they were. I'm just
that's what I mean. I just think it's a support that's okay. Good. Let's get into it. So I mean, let's start then with Derek McInnes. We were at his unveiling, and one of the things that I asked him, because I'm quite fascinated by this concept, is this is the first manager Rangers have had for a while who comes from actually someone who has watched Rangers as an opposition coach and thought, how do I beat that? What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? And I was quite fascinated by that idea of it, because it is different to someone who's coming in, probably doesn't follow the league, let's be honest, closely, and has to do the cramming on Rangers, has to do the cramming on the opposition teams, and will do so because they're all diligent professional coaches. I'm not talking about that. But someone who has actual experience of looking on and seeing, right, this Rangers team, this is what it's good at, this is what it's bad at, this is maybe what it lacks that we can get at. And he said, quite an interesting reply. He said, that's definitely something, but it changes now because obviously when you're on the outside looking at it, you're looking at ways to take advantage of those issues. And now it's to fix them. But it is a different profile from what we've had in the past.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I know a lot of it, and I think we've all had a bit of fun with, gets it, knows the league and all that kind of stuff. And that's not peculiar to Rangers, is it? There's a lot of that chat just in English football in terms of English managers getting jobs that maybe Johnny Forner could have got or did get in the past, or why they're not getting those jobs. So there is something. I've been really disappointed in the past by one thing more than any other, and it's just the lack of preparation about the challenge that awaited them. A lot of that football theory experience, whatever else, especially in recruitment, just does not work here. It is a special club. The expectations are through the roof. The pressure's incredible. And there's a lot of kind of bemused faces in that manager, that dugout, in that hot seat of late. Say, well, this should work. We've had a good week in training. These players are good. I've seen good things. Why are they shaking like a shitting dog just because, it's not going well after an hour at home? It's just a total lack of understanding and preparation. Derek McInnes understands that. I have no question he understands that. He has exploited it on a few occasions, as you've mentioned.
Yes, Daly. Unfortunately, yes.
But as you've also, as he intimated, he now needs to turn gamekeeper, and he needs to be the one that steps up a level in terms of expectation, in terms of front foot forward, and that's a challenge. We it's an unknowable at this moment in time, because he'll have to manage in a way or in circumstances that just bear no relation whatsoever, even last season, to what he's experienced before, how he has managed players, how he has set up teams, how he has dealt with particular tactical challenges. But at least he has an understanding of the basic concepts about he has been a Rangers player, so he will understand what those players are going through. But as Derek McInnes, the manager, he's gone into the unknown a bit too, and there's risks in all of these appointments, and that's probably the biggest there.
No, that's a very fair point. And obviously Rangers have just completed their pre-season. Again, whenever we play an English team in a friendly, Martin, what I'm taking at most is the size of the English team. Even yesterday, West Ham United, it's not height necessarily, it's build. They are all built like tanks, and it's like, my goodness, the physicality that's there. But Rangers had played a few behind closed doors fixes, played 2 public ones, Saint Etienne and West Ham. And I think for me, the takeouts from these games are pretty common, actually. I don't think that many people have left with different opinions, which is, we already do look more solid and organised. And even within the space of these 2 games, you can see improvements there. You can see that people know shape and structure, and the defence looks hopefully less prone to giving away comedic goals, which has been a real Achilles heel for a while. But a lack of creativity in the front third.
Yeah. I've got nothing else to add to that. It really is as simple as that.
Which, to be fair, Derek McInnes has not shied away from. He said in his post-matches, we are short of quality in the wide areas.
And yeah, we know this. And again, I guess that's where people's worry, any anxiety comes from. Well, this isn't news. We know that. Why wasn't this maybe a bit of an earlier priority? But again, tough. We're just going to have to wait and see where we are in September. And listen, you know me. Let's shut the back door first. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think he agrees with you there.
Yeah, it just comedy after comedy after comedy nonsense. Every week it felt like over the last couple of years and more. Regardless of some of the decent stuff that we were able to do in some of those forward areas, there was always a nonsense coming. And that spreads throughout the team, it spreads throughout the stands. 1-0, 2-0, Christ, isn't enough. So I have no huge issue with that. But a lot of, especially the wider players that we have, they're total confidence players. Kind of the nature of the job, I guess, David. I'm not entirely sure that won't ever be the case. No matter who we sign there, I think that there always will be players that have been players who can look like world beaters, really, when the place is just firing and they have complete trust in who they've got in the middle, who they've got in the middle of the park and behind them and all the rest of it. But it is clunky. It's still a big concern. Obviously, the intensity isn't quite there as you would expect it to be. And yeah, I completely agree with your takeaway every summer when we play an English team, just how physically more imposing they are. But they're also a couple of weeks behind. So I would always temper anything that looks good against those Premier League teams. Well, West Ham aren't, but the English teams. So yeah, we'll see. But I am happy that you can kind of take that away. I don't read too much into the pre-season stuff, but I don't dismiss it completely. There are always positives and concerns that are likely to manifest themselves when the real stuff started. I think I always reference the 2 Burnley friendlies that we played under Warburton. Remember, we lost that first one 1-0, but we were good. And it was almost, we'll be fine. Like, this is, in terms of organisation, in terms of idea, we're going to be all right this season. We will go up. There's going to be no drama here. There's progress immediately. And then we played Burnley, I think, in the last pre-season game before the Premier League started. And it was like, oh dear.
Yes.
We are in big trouble. So, yeah, there's stuff to take. But there's nothing much more to that. It's either going to be Ant-Man, Gassama, Curtis, whoever you're talking about, eventually gets that confidence back because they're surrounded by better players and a more cohesive structure, and they know that if we do get 1 or 2, that will be enough because we're going to keep the door shut, and they'll eventually grow into it, or, which I'm pretty sure is the answer, we need new blood there. But you know me, David, it's a spine all the time. If you build genuinely good, not decent, but good spine right throughout the team, I think honestly we'll be all right, because I think confidence just emanates from that. I don't think we've ever had it really since we won the title, and there's still a bit of work there to be done for me, especially in the middle of the park.
On that, Rangers signing so far this summer, 3 of them are captains, if you like. 3 of them have been captains of the previous sides. That isn't coincidence, is it?
Nope.
That's a definite move towards something that Rangers have been lacking. And I would also add into, you mentioned earlier, the leadership group, Tavernier away, Butland away, Suter not quoted, not even in the squads for these. Yeah. And there are guys who've been in these squads who are leaving, 100% are leaving. He wasn't even involved in them. That, to me, along with bringing in the type of people that they brought in, is a very clear statement, I think, from club and manager as to one of the major things. And clearly, it's something I've ranted and raved about. It's something you've spoken about. It's something the fans in general have noticed over the last few years. And it does seem like a very conscious effort to try to say we actually need guys out there who maybe aren't quite as technically proficient as some of the other options we had, but we know have got certain characteristics that we have badly lacked.
Aye, there's nothing new there. I mean, I wrote about this last week or whatever it was, last weekend, in the review. That old Bill Struth story about waiting for a player to come into the office and to sign his contract. And, I hear you're a good player, son, but can you play for Rangers? It's difficult. And it just needs 3, maybe 4, who just exude that, who live for that pressure. Don't just chat shit in the media. They you can just see they thrive off that expectation, and then that just, as I said, it emanates from there. So I think you're right. Again, we'll see, because Robin Proper was a captain.
Yeah,
people told me how good, how leading, how dominant he was. Sure, he was in Eredivisie, but it's a different ballgame. So
I genuinely think that all Eredivisie signings should be like a phone contract. I think they should come with a 14-day change your mind policy for everyone. This is not just for us. And I'm talking to the guys who go for millions. I think it's hit or miss. That's a very unique league. Let's put it.
But there are no guarantees anywhere.
Yeah.
With any league that you're shopping in, and I agree. I think Derek McInnes played a pretty straight bat at that unveiling, quite direct. He's quite a direct character.
He is, yeah.
And there was not a lot of the linked English that we've been treated to in recent iterations. But he said one thing a few times, which is, looking under the bonnet and really seeing what they as human beings are made of, because you need it. As we know, so I think there's a lot of hope there, especially with the more recent recruit from Partizan. But again, young, but that's fine.
Very, 20 years old to be a captain of
Yeah.
a club like Partizan. That's a
That
big club.
says something, and I'm glad about that. Again, and this is wishful thinking or whatever, but I think I've said this pretty consistently since I've been on this podcast and live shows or whatever else. Rarely do we make signings where you're like, oh wow, okay. He instantly is the best player for his position in the league. And I'm afraid that's kind of what Rangers need. It's what we ended up with in that league title winning season. McGregor, Hollander, Davis, and Roof. You're like, yeah, they're the best. And everyone else knows that. And from that, all of a sudden you get consistency out of guys you just weren't getting before, didn't get after. And that still costs a bit of money. But I hope people understand what I mean by that. I'm not denigrating any of the signs, because I'm quite quietly happy about a few of them. But I still think we're missing that absolute number one leader, and he's got the technical ability as well, and undisputed best player in his position in this division. And I think that just turns a lot of lights on when that happens.
One player who I think was maybe a signing that we all slightly raised our eyebrows at was Cammy Devlin, but the manager said something really interesting when he was unveiled. Devlin, I mean, not McInnes. He said, as much as I like him, I wouldn't be signing him if I didn't think he could do the job that he's going to be asked to do. And just the specificity of that made me think, that's quite an interesting one. And I think we've already seen this week what that job is. He is a talker, and the manager spoke about being disappointed in the first half of St Etienne that there wasn't that, and Devlin came on, put in a few tackles, got the crowd into the game a little bit. Now, this sounds incredibly basic, I know, right? And I'm sure there will be people who are qualified coaches who understand those wee kind of diagram things that you see on Twitter a lot these days, radars, those ones. And they'll be saying, David, that's ridiculous, right? It's a nonsense. You're saying a guy has to go in and make some tackle. Yeah, there's much more to it than management than that. Yes, there is. I'm not doubting that for a second. But there are other sides to the game that we have clearly been failing at over the last few seasons. And I watched him quite closely in the match against West Ham. And what was noticeable, Martyn, was, especially for a new guy, the amount that he was going up and talking to teammates and pointing things out and whatnot. And I do wonder if the manager has signed him again. Technically, I don't think anyone's expecting, Stephen Davis Mark II in there, but with a very specific job in mind of almost being his lieutenant on the field of play.
Yeah, I'll be. I think one of the only ones who wasn't at all negative about that signing. I thought it did make sense for exactly that kind of reason. It's energy in the dressing room, I imagine, but energy on the pitch. We have bemoaned it's a very quiet team, and again, does that radiate? Does that well,
we're not alone in that. The last three managers have bemoaned that.
Yeah, here's another thing to get over. They all have understood that Rangers have needed leaders. They get it, but making it happen, or Rangers being able to afford or attract the players who can be leaders here, not leaders at other clubs that have got completely different expectations and makeups and everything else. Players who can genuinely make that step and come into a dressing room and the whole dressing room goes, whoa, fuck, right, things are different, and set a different tone. Because how many managers, how many players, the same culture was being criticised for years after years because the same tone's been set every day.
Correct.
That's what I meant about that freshness with that leadership group, just, moving on. Someone else has got to set that tone. And it's easier said than done, sadly. But they've all understood it. I don't think they've dismissed that necessarily. But it's harder to really kind of make it happen. But no, I was absolutely fine about Devlin signing. I don't know how often he will play, but
yeah, that's
just
and he
in
might
that,
be
in that dressing room every week, every day at training. I don't mind that at all. I remember one of my, think maybe my first flagship. I think you talked about, Rangers needing that. And I said, well, we have it in Ryan Jack, but how often will he play? Because he'll get booked all the time.
That's
we know
concern,
there's a different pressure here. We know there's a different noise about what happens to Rangers players and discipline. So there's not a lot of use if they're in the stands for a third of the season or whatever. So there's other dynamics going on with that one. But no, I was absolutely fine with that. He's been no surprise in terms of just how he's going about it. The kind of player you just hate other teams having.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't mind that at all. I still, it's the Raskin replacement, if and certainly when he goes, that is going to be a large chunk of that fee. That's the kind of thing that I still think needs to just really set the place alight. And obviously, as we said, that's going to be down the line a wee bit. But
I think he's
definitely
here.
will do for me.
I think it's Dragojevic. I don't think you'll see much happen there with the midfield.
You really think so? Well,
I could be totally wrong.
Then it's a grower. Then it's a grower into something, and we're all pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah, priority positions are. I think manager said yesterday we're pretty well set at midfield. The club are quite taken with Dan Neil, and I know that the supporters aren't yet. So
I am.
I think they have very high hopes for him.
I think that was a bit what I know. We live, and you talked about the online thing, and it's really not good for you. But do you not think that was a bit over the top yesterday? I thought he was decent. I thought he always looked to go forward. I know his corners.
Fine, yeah. His corners were rubbish, yeah. But no, I thought he was fine. I think some of the reaction is, it's probably been a bit too effusive about Devlin, for example, based on 245 minutes, and it's probably been a little bit too harsh on certain other players. I mean, Godfrey was getting it tight after Saint Etienne, and then today it's been full of praise. As I say, I think increasingly online is no accurate guide. I think there's always been, a lot of noise on it anyway. But I think increasingly, as I say, just anecdotally, a lot of people I know have come off social. And what tends to happen is it's the more sensible people who leave because they get fed up with extreme opinions, and then what you're left with is just the extreme opinion guys who are all trying to outdo each other on how angry they can be, how upset they can be, how praiseworthy they can be, how happy they can, and it becomes a competition. But yeah, look, I'm going to wait and see. I don't think we can tell anything as of yet. The one thing I would say about Devlin, Martyn, that you can't extrapolate because it is a friendly and it doesn't mean too much, and that's correct. But we actually started with a good tempo yesterday, and he was a big part of that.
Yeah.
And if he can set tempo, particularly at home, where Rangers have just dawdled the first half hour because the opposition let them. I actually mentioned on a show today, I used one of your lines. I credited you, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm not a thief. But I said that we let teams bed in for bed and breakfast. We let them get settled and find out where the facilities are, because they'll let us have the ball on the halfway line between the central midfielder and the two centre halves, and we will pass it between them for half an hour before generally the opposition score or the crowd starts to turn, and then Rangers go into full-on panic mode, fight or flight kicks in.
It's panic.
And it's panic, yeah. And then, so the games are always frantic, whereas Devlin, I thought, set an aggressive... I don't mean aggressive by, fouling people. I mean just pushing at people to get forward. There's one point where he played a ball into Romans played it forward and then didn't make a run, and Devlin was over shouting, "Run, get forward." That I think would be incredibly useful for us. So all roads now lead to Tannadice up on Friday night, a Friday night game to begin the season. Sky, because there's no EPL yet, will be forgotten about instantly when that happens, I'm sure. But till then, they're making a big deal of it. All the Scottish games are live this week, Martyn. The first weekend, every one of them will be on Sky Television this weekend. So not only a chance to see us, but a chance to look over the opponents as well, for those of you so minded.
Yeah, if you not had enough football this summer, and you've had a week off or whatever since the World Cup final, I don't know what other delights are in store for the Sky viewing public, but I'm sure it will be. Yeah, I those who don't have a dog in the fight, surely you've just got to be enjoying a bit of respite from a whole fucking summer that just never seemed to end with the World Cup that took about 200 games to finish. But sure, if you're total junkies, then it's there for you. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It'll be patched back into Saturday, 11 o'clock or whatever, pretty quickly.
Yes, it will. As soon as the EPL kicks into gear, I think that's when it will. They'll start getting the captions wrong and things like that, like they tend to do once the season begins. But looking forward to it as always. Not an easy. I still can't believe they didn't send us to Tynecastle on the opening night. I thought that was nailed on after last season, and then obviously McInnes and Shankland. Perhaps sensitive to allegations that their fixture computer isn't quite as benign as they'd like to make out, and instead we got up to tie this, which will not be easy about it because they've already played 4 competitive games because of the League Cup group stage.
Yeah, look, there's something in that that absolute sharp end stuff, but I'm fed up talking about difficult places to go and
no, you're right.
They've had a bit of football fucking. This is what has to change. And again, managers can obviously help, but I'm still unmoved on the belief that it takes big players to come in and just change that, just almost reset an attitude, like wipe history, recent history especially, the scars and the trepidation, and just say, who are you fucking playing for? But that again, that really does take that freshness in the dressing room. It can't be done without it, I don't think. So let's hope some of the new boys can just set a different tone. Your point about Devlin and tempo is a little manifestation of that, but be absolutely more of that, please.
Absolutely. And of course, folks, we'll be here all season here on Heart and Hand to share with you our experiences of it, the ups and the downs, hopefully a few more of the former this season and a few less of the latter. And of course, we're every day. You can get up to 5 shows every single day on our Patreon, patreon.com/Heart and Hand. If you're not a member, you get a free week's trial. You can dip your toe in and see if you like it. We are a bargain. So please go and have a look at that. A thanks to Rangers Youth Development Co., who we are partnering with again for this season. And of course, to our sponsors, Nord. Martyn, thank you very much for taking the time. And again, my friend, I look forward to following the season with you, going through the various moods that will no doubt occur as we continue to spend far too much of our lives following this football club.
This ridiculous life. But we wouldn't have it any other way. And
no.
Enjoy the season, listeners. Let's hope it's a better one.
Yes, it's about bloody time. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks. We'll be back next week. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.